Welcome to Corpstruction, the podcast of the Tulsa District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Today I'm at Eufaula Dam, and I guess this is southeastern Oklahoma technically, or how do you define this area of Oklahoma? Is it eastern Oklahoma, mid-eastern?
Eastern Oklahoma for the most part. You could call it southeastern because we're south of I-40.
There you go. I'm here with Johnny Bray. Johnny Bray just celebrated his 40th year of service to the Corps of Engineers and was awarded the Fleury, which is the highest medal you can get as a civilian with the Corps of Engineers. And Johnny is going to retire at the end of this calendar year. So we just had his retirement ceremony, and that was amazing. Thank you for having me here, Johnny, to talk to you about your years of service.
You're welcome, and I'm glad to have you here as well.
So one thing I noticed, I'm just going to, because I wrote you some questions out and sent them to you, but one thing I noticed, I want to get right down to the retirement ceremony, is how many people you had here. And I think that says a lot about you as a person, because there were people from all over that showed up for your retirement ceremony. And I've been to a lot of retirement ceremonies and very few. Now, I know you did make your famous brisket, so we can try to say that food brought them in, but I'm pretty sure it was all about you. Now, how does that make you feel knowing so many people showed up?
Oh, I was in awe. It was just an awesome celebration. Yes, I made the comment I didn't know there was that many people wanted to come and see me leave, but yes, I was just shocked that had that many people show up, and I really appreciate folks taking time out of their day and their week to come and celebrate my career, and I really appreciate it.
Johnny, let's talk about what you do right now for the next rest of the calendar year, at least. What does your job entail here at the powerhouse at Eufaula Dam?
Okay, so I am the maintenance supervisor here at Eufaula. Recently had a name change or a title change from power plant specialist to maintenance supervisor, but it was just a name change. Duties are still the same. So I manage the operations and maintenance of the power plant here, the power plant as well as the flood control dam structure, if you will. So I manage a crew of 5 to 6 folks. We have two electricians, a senior electrician and a journeyman or a electrician. And I have a mechanical crew of 3, which consists of a senior mechanic and 2 journeyman mechanics. And they do the day-to-day maintenance of the power plant and the spillway structure, as well as all of the breakdown jobs and maintenance.
How many watts can the dam generate here?
So the power plant has 3 main units. They are each 30 megawatt units for a total plant capacity of 90 megawatts.
And while the electricians and even the mechanical guys and the electricians, they do a lot of overlap, don't they, in terms of their work?
Oh yeah, with the small crews that we have, we always say that we're understaffed, but that's the way it's been since day one in these power plants. But with the small staff that we have, sometimes the major jobs require that both crews work on the same project. So it's not surprising to see all 5 crew members plus myself working on one repair job.
What's the dirtiest job that you guys have here?
Oh, probably cleaning sumps, oil, whether it be oil sumps or drainage sumps, is probably the nastiest jobs. to get the dirtiest in, and of course we have a sewage system as well. So I don't have to tell you what that might involve.
I won't bring back any of those memories because you started out at Webbers Falls, right?
I did.
And you went through was it the similar journeyman program that you have where you
Yes.
basically you have a certain amount of time to complete testing and learning. And then you were at Denison Dam
Yes,
on the
I
Red
was.
River for a few years, right?
Yes.
Before coming back to basically a few miles from where you grew up, right?
Exactly. I started out at Webbers Falls Powerhouse, and they were undergoing a repair project there at that time in 1982, replacing the main shaft on all 3 units at that time. I spent 2 years there, and most of that time involved welding and grinding on unit parts to get ready to put those units back together. And then after 2 years there, I went to Denison, Texoma, completed my training program there, which is a 4-year training program, and became a journeyman mechanic during my time there. I spent 4 years total there at Denison, and then was fortunate enough to get transferred back to Eufaula. When I say back, it was back home for me. I live local here, just a few miles from Eufaula Dam. Never thought I would be able to work right here at home where I was raised. So I've been really fortunate for my career is to be able to work so close to home where I was raised and raise my family in the local school system where I went to school.
And a lot of your employees here, they're relatively local, if not from maybe Eufaula. They're from typically around Oklahoma or Arkansas area, pretty close by, right?
Right. So we're really blessed. These powerhouse folks, for the most part, they get to work in an exciting environment, a really neat job, and get to live close to home. We're really blessed with that.
Do you think there's what do you think the biggest misunderstanding is about hydropower in terms of what people think versus what actually goes on with it?
Well, you would be surprised what the general public believes about a powerhouse. All they see is a big concrete building and think it's just that, a big concrete building. There is so much more involved once you come through the door of a powerhouse. There's so much equipment, not only main equipment, generating equipment, flood control equipment. There's so much auxiliary equipment that's involved in the operations of that major equipment. The general public don't realize how much is involved inside a power plant.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that we decide that we're going to just generate power and to for better or worse, that's really another level of decision making that goes on, correct? We turn the switch for them. Maintain the equipment, but it's kind of a swap decision, right?
Right. And I might back up. These dams were built for flood control. That was the primary purpose of these was for flood control. But naturally, some of these lakes are able to support hydropower generation. And so not only is the flood control a multi-department organization, it takes our H&H to evaluate flows and to determine the best plan for releases. That's likewise with hydropower. We've got Southwest Power that manages the electrical generation for all of the core projects in Tulsa District and Little Rock and Fort Worth, and so there's several departments involved in that process.
So, what do you, in the 40 years since you started out versus here we are today in 2022, what do you think is the biggest change that you've seen?
Probably, obviously, would be technology. When I started at Webbers Falls, we do a daily operations report, which calculates not only the generation that we put out, but also the flows, the water coming into our reservoirs, the water going out our reservoirs and down the stream. So that when I started, that was all done with a sheet of paper, a pen, and a calculator. And now it's pretty much an automated program, and it's just a few mouse clicks, and it does itself basically. So that's one thing that's really changed. And when I said the training program, I started in a 4-year training program, and we've had so much success with that we still do a 4-year training program. So that's something that really hasn't changed in my 40 years. But the biggest change would probably be the technology and the automation of several operations programs.
Yeah, you guys were you punching a clock for time cards back in the day, or?
No, we've never so much had a time clock, but our original timesheets when I started 40 years ago were handwritten. We had charge codes on a spreadsheet, and then we just write down our hours, different hours for the day, and so that's a lot different now. Of course, it's been more automated.
Right. Why did you decide 40 versus 35 to retire when you were coming up on that decision?
Well, I was fortunate to start really early. I was 19 when I started at Webbers Falls. So to get my 40 years in, I was still going to be relatively young, 59, and I'm fortunate now to have reached my 40 years and be in good health, just be able to spend more time with the family while I'm still healthy. I guess I feel like I could probably work 45 years and be healthy and at 45 years, but it's just a goal I had set, is getting 40 years in, and here I am, and I'm healthy, and I think it's just time to go.
What are you going to do in your retirement? Do you have plans to travel at all?
Oh yes. My wife and I, we like to travel. We'll pull the fifth wheel and do a little traveling with it. We'll travel, of course, without the fifth wheel. Some we like to travel. I have a farm that I raise cattle, and I'll be doing that most of my time.
Who were the people when you started that you really looked up to? That were the I know a lot of the people here, they look up to Johnny Bray. Who was the Johnny Bray of your era, and why?
So, I've had several in 40 years that I really looked to for guidance, and they were really good about offering that guidance. To name a couple, our test crew back when I started consisted of a couple of gentlemen, Ellis Williams and Bill Johnson. They were really good at what they did. They were dedicated to what they did. They essentially would go around and to all 8 power plants and do the testing. A lot of the troubleshooting issues that power plant folks needed assistance with, they would do that. They were just a couple of really quality gentlemen that I enjoyed working with, and I learned a lot from those guys. Now, since then, they have retired and moved on. Another one that I've really looked up to in recent memory is Jeff Miller. He was an electrical engineer out of Tulsa, and he actually retired as a power plant specialist. He knew his stuff. He was a top-notch quality power plant employee, and I admire him as well.
Yeah, Jeff, he was over at Fort Gibson at the end, right?
Correct.
And I remember interviewing him about the Rural Electrification Act.
Uh-huh.
He talked that, and he knew that thing really well, and the history of hydropower and why the Corps has hydropower, and it was in talking to him about that, it was really impressive just to learn about how these pieces of legislation played into basically the jobs that you all have.
Correct. Yes, and referring back to Jeff, that's the kind of person he was. He would take something and learn every degree of it, and so he could pass on that knowledge to anybody that needed it.
Yeah, he was at your retirement, and it was good seeing him. I mistakenly called him Pete for some reason. But it was good to see him again. And I guess you guys are probably going to go hunting together or hang out a little bit, I'm sure, in retirement.
Well, Jeff and I, we've been known to fish together some. And there's another electrical engineer that left here several years ago and went to the Bureau. His name was Kerry McCalman, and Jeff and Kerry and I, we've hunted together, we've fished together over the years, and hopefully be able to do some of that in the future together.
So, is there one individual? Would you say that Jeff was the individual who had the greatest impact on you, or is there
probably in recent memory? But like I say, Jeff was more recent. Ellis Williams and Bill Johnson, when I first started, they were rock solid.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think it was about those guys that made you want to listen to them?
Well, they were very knowledgeable about hydropower. There was really nothing that I recalled would stump those guys. If it was a tough troubleshooting thing, they would, they were very good at troubleshooting, and they would stay with it and get it figured out. And I just admired them for their persistent desire to do the right thing. And I learned a lot from those two guys.
Now, in the 40 years you've been here, you've been through droughts, you've been through floods. There was a 15 flood. I know there were some before 15. There was a 19 flood. What flood would you say was probably, at least as far as where you were located at the time, was probably the biggest impact on you?
So the 1990 flood was the most severe here at Eufaula. It was the first week of May. I think our maximum discharge during that flood was 240,000 CFS. And it was a really significant flood. And the second most severe flood at Eufaula was 2015. And I think our maximum discharge for it was around 172,000 CFS. Those are the two that stand out. Now we have had some really high lake elevations that we were able to minimize the flooding downstream. Of course, all of those minimize the flooding downstream, even though the public sometimes don't see that. But those 2 years, 1990 and 2015, were the two that stand out here.
what's it like in the powerhouse when there's a major flood going on,
Well,
or at the at the dam and the powerhouse, I guess.
these structures are designed for that. Naturally, you're a little nervous about the higher flows, but they're designed for that. And if you'll just maintain your equipment and monitor the things that need monitored, we have checklists that are set up for inspections during certain elevations. The higher the lake elevation, there's more things that we need to monitor and check on a daily basis and even an hourly basis. So as long as you check those boxes, that you're supposed to monitor, everything's going to be fine. And this facility, this structure, performed just as it was supposed to in those floods.
Now, we say we always talk about how the structures were designed to do this and that. When you were saying that there's a little bit of concern about higher flows or elevations or whatever, or releases, I would imagine a lot of that is external, not necessarily with the structure itself, or is it different?
A little bit of both. I mean, yes, we monitor movement gauges inside at different parts of the structure just to make sure nothing's moving that's not supposed to be moving, and it's not moving more than it's supposed to move. Right. So there's some internal and there's some external places that we have to evaluate. But like I say, we the first one in '90, it was kind of all new to me.
Right.
I had only been at this facility for a couple of years, so it was a little nerve-wracking on my part. But I was a journeyman mechanic at the time, and just did my inspections as I was supposed to, and everything worked out, and I don't see any reason why it won't work out in the future. These facilities are built rather well.
And there's constant inspections and maintenance, and like you were saying, as long as you're maintaining the equipment the way it needs to be maintained in the structure, it should be all right. But you've never felt like afraid, like being in the structure yourself, like, oh my gosh,
Well, sure, I was nervous during that first '90 flood because things were moving that I had never seen move before. but with our structural engineering department and H&H, they assured me that was normal, and it was. After I learned later that was normal to see that kind of movement. That's the way the structures are designed, and so that kind of eased my fears, I guess.
Like a skyscraper swaying in the wind,
right?
Like
well,
it's supposed to do that, to a degree.
These structures do the same thing. There's some movement.
The 15 flood. So there's bridge work going on right now at Eufaula, and they're still at the dam, and they're still doing that. And I think a lot of the road wear that was attributed was from 15. People were driving over the dam real slow, watching the release.
Well, somewhat correct. I mean, there was some issues with the bridge deck previous to that.
Right.
That just typical delamination of the concrete surface a little bit. Typical potholes in concrete. And yes, when we had the 15 flood, we had a large amount of traffic going across the bridge, and that just compounded the problem, maybe accelerated the deterioration of that deck somewhat. So yes, you could relate that a little bit to the traffic from the 15 flood. We noticed a significant increase in the pothole activity on that bridge deck after the flood of 15.
Oh, what makes you more nervous, being in the structure during a flood, or being on the catwalk removing a log jam during a flood?
So being the dam and the powerhouse during a flood doesn't affect me much anymore. I've pretty much seen it all in 40 years, and know what to expect from this structure, and know it will operate as normal. But the one thing the thing on the catwalk, as far as the logs, we don't have log jams here on Eufaula. This relatively clean lake as far as debris.
Right.
Now, naturally, when the lake level goes up, then you get some floating debris in the lake that you normally don't see because it gets up in
takes off docks.
Right. It takes
you end
it
up
takes
big
off
pieces of foam and
the one thing that you have to watch and you have to be aware of when you're out on that catwalk is any of those trees that might be floating in the lake when they get to the spillway. So when you're spilling a large amount of water, you get vortexes, whirlpools that start there on the lakeside. And those trees, when they float in there, they naturally will go down through the gate opening and get sucked down and into the river. So what you've got to be aware of is those trees, when they get to that vortex, they're going to stand on end and go down vertical. So you got to be well aware of that. Don't want to get knocked off the catwalk by a tree limb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever been hit by a tree limb?
I have not, but I have seen those. I've seen those trees stand up and come in contact with the catwalk. It does happen.
Like big giant post oak going down
Yeah.
there. Have you ever seen them get jammed in the gate underneath, or where? Well, obviously you wouldn't see that, but you.
No, we've never had one really get stuck here. Now you do hear them when they go through. They'll make contact with the gate, and they make a really bad noise when they go through. But with the power of the water going through, they
flushes them.
They don't get hung up too often.
Yeah, I've seen them at Fort Gibson during I want to say during 19, and I saw them clear a log jam, and that was I was standing there, watching, photographing, videoing it, and I was nervous because it's the water, it gets up to your, it's like splashing all around you, and
yeah, it's a pretty impressive sight.
It is, and how many gates are here at Eufaula?
We have 11 Tainer gates.
Okay, 11 Tainer gates and 3 hydropower units.
Correct.
Which can do about 90. You said 90 megawatts, right?
So a little reference on that. Our units, our 3 units, each at normal head, normal lake elevation. These units will average about 4,000 CFS. Now we measure discharge in CFS, which is cubic feet per second, rather than gallons per second. So these units at normal operation, 30 megawatts with normal head, average about 4,000 CFS discharge per unit. So with the 3 units, naturally we have about 12,000 CFS when they're operating at normal full capacity. And so that gives you a little bit of reference. When I said the flood back in 90, we discharged 240,000 CFS.
Right.
So that's 20 times basically what the 3 units normally put out.
Oh, wow. When you have certain elevations, does it impact the way or how much you can generate? If the elevation is really high, does that affect the units?
It does somewhat. The units are designed to offset that. They can. It may take a little wider wicket gate opening as the head goes down. So naturally, when you're discharging more water, your river level comes up, which causes your head to go down.
Right.
So, but we have never had an instance where we could not generate here due to head.
Oh, wow. So, Eufaula was completed the dam was completed in what, 64?
64.
Okay. Now, and you came to work in 82 and you were 19, you said?
Yes.
So you were a baby.
Yeah, I was, when Eufaula was completed, I was about 1 year old.
Did you hear stories growing up about people working on the dam?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I bet you probably grew up with people who said, oh, yeah, my dad or grandfather worked on that.
Oh, yeah, and I still hear that. I hear folks tell me that their grandfather worked on it, and I've known several personally that worked on it, and it's really neat when you talk to those guys and they talk about the construction and they describe where they were working on, what area they were working on, and you can, working here, you can relate to that. Oh yeah, I know where that's at, what that is. So that's a really neat conversations.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever had anybody say, yeah, I tried to write like Billy Bob Loves Arlene or something in the concrete somewhere?
No,
you've never found anything like that.
I don't think I've heard that.
You've never found any concrete graffiti from a worker from the past, right?
No.
See, people were so professional back then.
Oh yeah.
Well, Johnny, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. I know it took me a while to get all my stuff set up here, but you got a really good studio set up actually in this office with the soundboards.
Hey, I have a nice office.
Yeah.
And I've told the guys lately, well, when I'm going through the retirement process, trying to entice some of the younger guys to step up and take my job, I said, not only do I have my own office, I have my own restroom, and I have my own floor in my powerhouse. I'm the only person on this floor, so I've got it made. I don't know why a guy would want to leave, but I think it's time.
So what day will be the last day that you officially drive out of those gates?
So we work 4/10s Monday through Thursday. So my last official day, of course, will be the 31st of December, which is on a Saturday. So that Thursday on the 29th of December will be my last day.
Do you think you'll be more happy or more sad?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be a little of both. It's bittersweet. You can't do something for 40 years that you love to do and not be a little sad. But I know what's on the other side. I'm excited to start a new chapter and spend more time with the grandkids and my kids and the wife. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Johnny, last question. What have I not asked you that you would have hoped I would have asked you so that you could have talked about?
Oh, man. I don't know. That's a tough question. That's the toughest question today. I don't really have anything. You've covered it. You've covered my whole career, I guess. Probably maybe some of the things that I've seen or that I've encountered in my 40 years, but there's too many to mention. I don't know if I could narrow it down to one anyway, so probably best not to ask that.
What about that first time you had to clean that was it the oil, the grease? There's that grease.
The oil sump at Weber.
Yeah.
The infamous oil sump.
Were you thinking like, why am I doing? Do I really want this job?
Oh, sure. When some of the jobs that I did when I first started, sure that goes through your mind. But it was so interesting. The first power plant I'd ever been in, our first hydropower plant, was the one that I started to work at on the day I started to work. So I was really green, really didn't know what I was getting into. But I went home at the end of that first day with like a, wow, I get to do this from now on. And I was just amazed. And that's pretty much what 40 years has been. It's just an interesting career.
I feel like there should be a certificate that all the people who have to do that after they do it the first time receive. Kind of like the Navy has their shellbacking ceremony for when people go across the equator on a ship. I feel like there should be like some kind of a ceremony where you've inducted them into the grease.
Yeah, maybe there should be.
Maybe
Maybe there should be.
Yeah, maybe we'll move. Well, you can suggest that to your successor.
Hey, if you work in a power plant, you're going to get dirty.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Johnny. I really do appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, and it's pretty quiet today, so that's good. And
yeah. So I appreciate it, Brennan, and likewise, thank you for taking your time to come down and talk with me.
You're welcome. Anytime, Johnny. Hopefully we'll see you in retirement too. Maybe I'll catch you fishing.
There you go. I'll be back.
Thank you for joining us for Corpstruction. Corpstruction is a production of the Tulsa District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office. This episode of Corpstruction is brought to you by the Powerhouse at Eufaula Dam. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.